Okay, today we are going to be talking to someone who has just released their second book and not even in college yet, Alice Tapper. Her new book is called Use Your Voice. She also has a book that she came out with a few years ago called Raise Your Hand. Both such empowering books, and I love the messaging. And as someone who finds themselves constantly reading new books to my kids, these two books have such great messages for children and for parents and just families in general. So I'm really excited to chat with Alice and hear all about her story and why she decided to use a very challenging experience for good. So welcome, Alice. Well, let's talk about your book because you've written two books, which is amazing. And the most recent one I want to talk about, Use Your Voice, but also Raise Your Hand, both really empowering and amazing subjects to be writing about. Did you ever feel like age was anything to prevent you from putting pen to paper, or you just wanted to do it?
No, I mean, especially with Raise Your Hand, I wasn't really obviously treated like an adult. I was 11, 12 years old. So I had definitely a different experience than a lot of authors. But for this book, it was a lot more independent, my new book for me. And both stories were just so close to home. I'm really grateful that my parents and my publishers and editors, they treated me like they listened to my ideas and treated me like an adult. And I felt like I had a lot of power in my story, and I'm really grateful.
That's so awesome. I think both messages are such empowering ones for kids to be reading about. And now, especially as a mom myself of two young girls, I find myself reading books, to start the morning and also end the day. So the messaging behind the books is so important. And yours are both filled with empowerment for all kids and especially young girls, which is amazing. So let's talk about Use Your Voice, because I want to hear about your story, and then I also will share my story that was weirdly similar to yours.
Well, my story had a dark turn. I was dying. Well, I went to the hospital and I was very sick one night after my first high school football game. And it felt like a pain I had never felt before. It was new. The doctors were saying that I had a viral infection, like maybe a stomach flu, or that I had really bad gas pains. And I kept pushing and saying, no, this is a new pain. Something does not feel right. I really wanted a scan. I wanted to know what was going on inside of me because something felt very, very wrong. It's like an alarm was going off in my mind. And for 32 hours, I was in hospital care, in a hospital, without getting a sonogram or an x-ray, and they had just claimed I had a viral infection. I was given a jump test for appendicitis, which was if you jump off the ground, it just rules out appendicitis. And I was able to get maybe half an inch off the ground in agonizing pain, and they said, oh, she does not have appendicitis. So they ruled that out, which felt kind of medieval to me, to be honest. At some point then, my appendix had ruptured, and I became septic. I was in hypervolemic shock, and I just became sicker, and my skin was turning greener and greener, and my parents were so alarmed and didn't know what to do. So my dad, who's a reporter on CNN, he was able to call the head of the hospital and reach out to them and demand and beg for an x-ray. And within 10 minutes or so, I got one. I got an x-ray, and they came back with my results and said, something is very, very wrong with your appendix, and they know they messed up. And because of that, my appendix ruptured, and I had to get many scans, many more sonograms, x-rays to see what was really going on. And I had toxic fluid leaking all over me from my appendix rupturing, and I was sent to the ICU, and I got 3 laparoscopic drains. And this was in November of 2021, and I wasn't better and fully recovered until that late March because I couldn't get my appendix out, so I wasn't really fully healing. And my colon had gotten so messed up from just my body attacking itself, basically. And it was the hardest thing ever. I was severely underweight. I'm 5'10", and I was under 90 pounds for a really long time. I was so weak, I couldn't really walk, and I felt like I was bothering the doctors. It was devastating to feel so helpless, and I don't want anyone else to feel the way I did, especially kids. And I want people to know that if adults aren't listening, you need to keep pushing for yourself so you can get the care that you need, especially in hospitals.
It's interesting because on this show, we talk a lot about advocating for yourself in a variety of different ways. And in the medical system is oftentimes where people feel like, oh, they're doctors, I'm not, therefore I should just listen to what they say, or, not come back and push further. But what you're saying in your book, and also advocating for parents and for kids, is the importance of trusting your gut and advocating for yourself. How big of a message is that you want to get across to kids and to parents? Because sometimes parents don't know where to begin with doctors and trusting what their kids are saying pain-wise.
Well, I'm not a doctor. My parents aren't doctors. They've never been in a situation where their kid has been in the hospital before. I had never been in the hospital before, and I was 14 years old. And even then, I just trusted adults, trusted the doctors to know what they were doing, but something felt really wrong in my head. And I just felt like I was getting sicker and sicker. And I kept telling them my pain is at a 10. I was pointing to the pain scale, saying I'm in so much pain, the worst I've ever been in. And they just weren't listening to me. And that's why it's so important to keep pushing for yourself if you're still in pain so you can get the diagnosis that you need. And the whole experience really lost a lot of my faith in adults, and it aged me in a way that I don't want to happen to other kids, because I had to grow up so much during that experience just to save my life and for the sake of my family. And it could have been a completely preventable issue. Everyone knows what appendicitis is. Everyone knows someone who's had appendicitis, except what made my case different, that they misdiagnosed it, is what I always wonder.
When you're reflecting on this story, obviously it's not like a pleasant one to reflect on, but you've decided to take your experience that is, traumatic and challenging to even recount, and you've made it into a mission and a book.
When I got better, I just started to think about the kids that didn't have a dad who could call the head of the hospital and didn't have the privilege that my dad had to just reach out to them, because this happens to other kids and I don't want it to happen to anyone else, because if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone else.
Yeah. And how did you decide to write the book? Because it's also written in a way that makes it not scary. And obviously the situation you experienced was really scary. So how did you take a situation and your own experience and make it one that was based off of your journey, but not one that's going to terrify children?
I definitely dumbed down the book a little bit because I wanted kids to be able to read it and learn something from it, and I wanted them to take away that they need to keep pushing for themselves and advocating for themselves. And it's hard for little kids to grasp that idea, so I've created my own little pain scale in the book, where the monsters jump off the page and help me pick out what pain I'm feeling and help me express my feelings to the doctors. And I think it's just a good visual for little kids, because it takes away a little bit of the scariness from just being in a hospital. And I know if I was a kid reading a book about hospital, I'd be really freaked out. But I think it's just a really important message for kids to know, to always be really saying what they feel and to not feel nervous or scared to express what you're feeling or feel like you're bothering people, because I felt like I was bothering the doctors and I was, oh, I don't want you to have to worry about me. I felt like I was taking up so much of their time when I really did need it.
And when you also wrote the book and also have gone and done your own press and talking about the book, what's the response been from parents and from kids?
I've gotten a lot of parents that have reached out to me. My sophomore year of high school, this was a little bit less than a year after I was sick, I got a DM on Instagram from a dad who saw my op-ed for CNN about my experience and the medical standpoint, and he was begging for help. His daughter was going through the exact same thing that I had went through, and she had a ruptured appendix in the ICU, and she was on the track team. She was a completely healthy girl, and then just one wrong mistake where her appendix ruptured, and now she was in this mess of a situation. And after that really opened my eyes, because I wanted to bring awareness to this issue of misdiagnosis, and especially with appendicitis and sepsis, because if you don't know what sepsis is, it's just, you can get it from any infection, and it's just a race against the clock at that point because you can get so quick so fast, and that's what happened to me, and I just really do not want it to happen to anyone else.
It's so crazy because, as you mentioned, appendicitis is something that's been around for a very long time. And yet it is something that I feel like some doctors and in some scenarios will overlook or not necessarily jump to, oh, you have appendicitis because you don't fall under these specific categories. But your book is about more than just appendicitis. It's about, advocating for yourself and being a voice for yourself in any situation and in any dynamic. Have you been able to kind of get any more trust in the medical system or feel comfortable in it at all? Or are you always going to kind of feel like you need to question it all?
I still trust all my doctors and medical professionals, but it just made me kind of lose the whole experience, kind of a sense of innocence almost, because I lost my reliance on adults and I felt more of an independence from it. And I definitely think after that experience, it made me a much more independent person. But I definitely still trust all my doctors. And I'm not saying to attack doctors and not believe your doctors, but I'm saying that it's really important to push for yourself and push for if something feels wrong.
So when I was telling you before we started recording that I had something similar, which I was in my freshman year of college, and I had this crazy pain, and I have a pretty high pain tolerance. I never complained about pain. And I remember going to my doctor and saying, I have this crazy pain. And they were saying, oh, maybe you have a cyst, or maybe you're getting your cycle, or maybe you pulled your abdominal wall, like all of these crazy things. And my sister and I went online, and I remember it just being like putting in your symptoms, and it was like appendicitis. And I kept saying, I think I have appendicitis. And they're like, no, you don't. Your white blood cell count doesn't meet the necessary requirement for appendicitis. Fast forward a week, and I drove myself to the emergency room because I threw up. Very similar to your story. Like, I threw up, and I met my mom there, and they did a scan after my mom begged to do a scan, and my appendix had ruptured, and we, had surgery. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days with sepsis. So the whole thing. And it's really wild, I think also then I was a freshman in college, and you were obviously younger as well, but you look at it from a parent's standpoint, and it's also, parents feel so helpless in those situations. Did you have any experience with your parents that really helped in that dynamic that allowed you to feel comfortable and confident around the setting again? Because your dad was really the one who pushed for you to get further examination.
I completely trusted my parents because I know they were doing everything they could, and I felt really bad for them because they're not doctors, so they didn't know how to diagnose me. They didn't know what exactly I was feeling and what was wrong. But I know that they just kept pushing for me, and I think it's so important as a parent to push for your kid if they still feel sick or if you know that something's wrong, because parents obviously spend so much time with their kids. And I just remember my mom being so concerned about she was saying my hands were turning white, my skin was turning green, and I was so out of it. But in the moment, I was so tired from my body just attacking itself that I couldn't even comprehend my hands turning white. So I think it's so important for parents to keep looking at their children and pushing for them.
I love the fact that age never made you not want to put out either of these books. And that's very similar to how I grew up, which was that, no matter what your age or, what you're doing with your life, there's always space to make a change, make the world a better place. Was that a really big part of how you grew up and the messaging that you were kind of raised around, was that, you can always make the world a better place?
Yeah, my parents were so supportive of me for my first book, and I wrote it with the Girl Scouts. So I was surrounded by my girlfriends and my troop to help me. I created a patch for Girl Scouts to earn where they pledged to raise their hand and recruit 3 other girls to raise their hands. And I just remember thinking I made such a change because for me, I noticed that I was more confident in class and I wanted to raise my hand more. And I saw it a little bit in my friends too. And seeing even now some Girl Scouts walking on about out and about, and I just see them with their raise your hand patch. It just makes me feel so special. But I know it's helping them because I know in the back of their mind they're thinking, oh, now I have to raise my hand in class. And with this book, I mean, even the comments on my Instagram are just people saying this similar thing happened to me, this similar thing happened to me, and most of them are women, and they've been misdiagnosed and told that they're pregnant or something's going on with their ovaries when really they're having appendicitis or they're septic. And I just think it's so important, especially for women, to keep pushing for themselves medically because I remember being in the hospital and they kept, when I really needed to get the toxic fluid out of my body, they were giving me like 4 pregnancy tests, and I was like, I'm not pregnant, and it was just a mess. And I remember even the radiology, they were concerned about putting the radiation, getting an x-ray on my uterus, and I was like, is that really what we should be worried about right now when I'm a 14-year-old girl in a hospital because I have a ruptured appendix and I'm septic? Is really my ovaries what we should be worried about? But I'm not a doctor, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible also just the level of confidence that you have at such a young age. Is that something that was surprising to anybody or even surprising to yourself?
I mean, honestly, I've definitely grown up a lot from this. With I used to be pretty shy. My mom would be like, "Okay, Alice, time to order your own food and drink at Starbucks," and I'd be like so scared to like ask. And at a restaurant, even I remember just being scared. And I was a little shy growing up, but then I just think with age, I grew out of my shell, and once I learned about how to make an impact with Raise Your Hand, it kept making me think about other changes I could be making, and especially with my new book, Use Your Voice, I just think it's such a powerful message. Like, I have to be confident and I have to share my story because it's helping people, and I know it is because I'm getting emails and DMs about it.
Did you ever feel like there was an option to not, like, it's rare that, you know, someone at your age would say, whether it's with Raise Your Hand or Use Your Voice, like, oh, I'm so young and I'm passionate about something, but I need to turn this into a book. Like, where did that desire come from?
Well, I grew up with my dad, and he has always been writing. So I've been surrounded by him writing, and he illustrates, and he's a really good artist, and he's just such a busy guy that it's given me a good sense of work ethic. And I knew I had to do something about my experience. I wanted justice not only for myself, but for Alice Jones, Alice James, the other kids who don't have a dad to call the head of the hospital because their stories have not been shared. And I was blessed to be given a platform where my story can be shared, but I just don't want it to happen to anyone else.
I think it's so admirable that you've chosen to take your position and your story and, you know, create something that can go out and empower young people, but also shine a light and awareness on just the issues, whether it's raising your hand in class or if it is just the medical system or, you know, parents feeling lost with the medical system and their kids or kids feeling like they don't trust adults in the medical system. I think all of these things are, you know, unique qualities about yourself that you've taken and put into books that are actionable items. Has it been really eye-opening for you to just go out and talk about these subjects, given the fact that you used to be so shy?
Um, yes, and I still get nervous sometimes, but I know that my story matters, and it's a really important message to bring awareness to misdiagnosis. And I've actually worked with the University of Michigan's medical program about misdiagnosis, and I just know that I'm making an impact. So even though I still get scared sometimes, like, I think it's the message and story that matters.
Do you feel like this is something that you're going to continue doing throughout your life, or you're just going to try to take it in stride?
I think this is a journey for me my entire life, and I want to keep pushing for patients and advocacy work. So, but yeah, I think I'm just going to continue this forever.
Do you think you'll do more books in your future? Have you enjoyed the process?
I love writing, and I love writing children's books especially. I think it's just targeting the little kids, just it makes me feel so special when I'm reading them my book, even just a few of them. I think if they think about it, it's just so important. So I want to keep writing children's books for sure.
That's so cool. I loved when I first did a children's book myself. It was such, I didn't have kids either when I did my first children's book. And it was like, I just loved the environment of being able to connect with kids about something that was important to me, and also connect with parents. And even though it was nerve-wracking, which I totally, relate to and understand, it's such a blessing to be able to put something good out into the world, and I'm sure you get that feedback all the time.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you to go to college. Are you gonna fully embrace the Michigan life and style?
Yeah, I'm gonna be rowing there, so I'll be an athlete. So I'll definitely
Oh,
be
wow.
put to work. But I know they treat their athletes so well, and I'm just so excited to be a part of the team, and to be surrounded by people who work hard and play hard. So I'm really excited to be a part of the Wolverine community.
Are you nervous about leaving home at all, or no?
I think I'll be ready.
Are we ready? Well, it seems like you come from such a great family and a close-knit family, and also just parents that really encourage you and support you to do what you want to do and support your advocacy work, which is amazing and so admirable. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing about your book. And I'm excited to read it to my girls, because I'm always about, teaching them about empowerment, even though they're 4 and 2. It starts at a very early age, and it's how I was raised. And I think it's such a important thing to be teaching young girls and boys, but especially for young girls, to grow up with that being a possibility. So thank you.
You so much. Oh, my mom wants to say something. She's coming.
I just want to say thank you for including Alice. We're so honored to be on this podcast, so that's so great. And I just wanted to say,
nice.
The University of Michigan, we reached out to them when she was sick, because I found a study on the internet that they'd done, a JAMA study about kids getting misdiagnosed with appendicitis and how dangerous it was. And so I emailed them, and then they immediately wrote back and started consulting with us through Alice's care. And they also created a Center for Diagnostic Excellence, because they'd been doing all this research, and they're like, we need to put our research to direct action to help patients. And so Alice will be going there next week to launch this program with them, because they really believe that in the ER, when you're misdiagnosed, it leads to so much trauma and unnecessary pain and suffering for the patient. And so if they can get ER doctors to do a better job of listening to patients and family concerns, so that they can get the right diagnosis from the beginning, we can avoid situations like Alice, especially with misdiagnosed appendicitis and sepsis. I just wanted to share that.
That's so great. I mean, using also such a traumatic experience for your whole family to make it into something that's so actionable is amazing too, because it's not like it's enjoyable to be reliving this experience all the time. For your mom too. I mean, I can't imagine as a mom. I remember when I had my appendix rupture, my mom was so upset about it. And then, as a mom myself, I just it's a lot. So kudos to you guys for being able to use your experience for good and for change, and also encouraging people to feel empowered enough in those settings to question, doctors, or push for advocacy for themselves, because it's not easy to do.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much to Alice Tapper for taking time today to talk to us about both of her amazing books and all of the incredible advocacy work that she is doing, using her very challenging and traumatic experience in the medical care system and deciding to use it for good and empower young people to be a voice for themselves and advocate for themselves, and also shine a light on certain issues that parents should be aware of. So I'm really grateful to both her and her mom and her dad for helping this interview happen, and go get her book.